So, yes, she met a charming, somewhat eccentric, rather brilliant individual.
Colin Firth built the kind of life most people only dream about. Oscars, global fame, beloved characters, and a reputation as one of Britain's most respected actors. But behind the charm and quiet confidence was a story marked by wounds that never fully disappeared. A childhood that left lasting music scars. A secret battle that nearly derailed his career. A humiliating betrayal that exploded across international headlines. And a series of deeply personal struggles that followed him long after the cameras stopped rolling. At 65, Colin FTH's life looks nothing like the fairy tale people imagined. The making of Colin Firth. Colin FTH has played kings, spies, and romantic heroes. He has won Oscars, starred in movies that grossed billions, and been named one of the most desirable men alive. From the outside, his life looks like a fairy tale. But behind the polished image and the awards, FTH has carried burdens that no amount of money or fame could fix. FTH was born on September 10, 1960 in Music Greyhot, Hampshire, a small town in southern England, to parents who valued education above all else. His father, David, was a history lecturer who spent his days teaching young minds about the past. His mother, Shirley, taught comparative religion, a subject that requires an open mind and a willingness to understand different cultures. Because of their teaching postings, FTH's early childhood was spent far from the green fields of England. He traveled to Nigeria, where his parents worked for a time, and he lived for a year in St. Louis, Missouri. The constant movement meant that he never quite felt rooted anywhere, a feeling that would follow him into adulthood. When the family returned to the United Kingdom, FTH faced a different kind of challenge. He was enrolled at the Montgomery of Alamine Secondary School in Winchester, a rough school where students did not take kindly to anyone who seemed different. FTH was an academic kid with educated parents, and his classmates targeted him for it. The bullying was severe enough that he had to develop survival strategies. He intentionally modified his accent, music, sounding less like a teacher's son and more like the kids around him. He feigned a lack of interest in academics, pretending not to care about the grades, music, that had once mattered to him. The goal was simple: to blend in, to become invisible, and to, music, avoid the fists and the taunts that came with standing out. The experience left scars that never fully healed. At 18, Firth made a decision that changed his life. He moved to London with no industry, music connections, no safety net, and very little money. He had been accepted to Music, the prestigious drama centre London. But the school year had not started yet, music, and he needed to pay rent. So he took a blue-collar job as a wardrobe department assistant at the National Theatre, spending his days handling costumes for actors who were already living the dream that he was still chasing. The work was music, grueling and poorly paid, but it kept a roof over his head. His breakthrough came during his final term at the Drama Centre. FTH Music was cast as Hamlet in a student showcase, a role that many actors spend their entire careers hoping to play. In the audience on one particular night was Julian Mitchell, a legendary playwright, who was looking for fresh talent. Mitchell was so impressed Music by what he saw that he immediately cast FTH to replace Rupert Everett in the award-winning West End production of Another Country in 1983. Music, the play was a hit, and FTH was suddenly a working actor. By the late 1980s, FTH had been grouped by film historians Music alongside Gary Oldman, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Tim Roth as part of what the press called the Brit Pack. These were raw, intensely music, serious young British actors who were redefining independent cinema. They were not interested in Hollywood glamour. They wanted to do good work, and they were willing to suffer for it. FTH fit right in. Then came 1995. FTH accepted the role Music of Fitzwilliam Darcy in the BBC's 6-part adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Music Prejudice. The production was faithful to the book, slow and deliberate, with none of the flash that Americans had come to expect from television. But the lake scene was what stood out most. FTH emerged from the water in a dripping wet linen shirt, and something happened that no one could have predicted. The actor who had spent years playing serious, brooding characters was transformed overnight into a permanent global attraction symbol. The episode drew 10 to 11 million viewers per episode in the United Kingdom, and FTH's face was suddenly everywhere. He translated that rigid Darcy persona into modern blockbuster gold. He starred in Richard Curtis's multi-million-dollar ensembles, anchoring classics like Bridget Jones's Diary, Love Actually, and the musical mega hit Mamma Mia. Audiences could not get enough of him. His cinematic projects have grossed more than $3 billion globally across 42 distinct releases. His individual net worth is estimated at over $25 million, built through back-end film percentages, production investments, and permanent global syndication royalties. But none of that money could protect him from what was coming. Behind the fame and the fortune, FTH was fighting battles that the public never saw. And the worst of those battles would leave him shattered. The Hidden Battles of Colin, music, FTH. In 1989, right as his British film career was taking off after starring in Valmont, FTH did something that confused everyone who knew him. He abruptly vanished from the London industry with no announcements or explanations. The reason was a woman. He had entered a passionate relationship with Canadian actress Meg Tilly, and the two of them decided to leave the chaos of music, celebrity behind. They relocated to a completely off-grid hand-built log cabin in the dense wilderness of British Columbia, a place so remote that the nearest neighbor was miles away. For nearly 5 years, FTH lived in absolute isolation. He was not acting, auditioning, or even thinking about movies. He became a stay-at-home stepfather to Tilly's children, and the couple welcomed their son, William, in 1990. To preserve his mental sanity and bring in basic funds, he worked as a manual carpenter and furniture maker. He built tables and chairs with his hands, the same hands that would later hold Oscars. He admitted later that during those years, he believed his mainstream acting career was permanently dead. He had walked away, and he assumed that the industry had moved on without him. The carpentry survival years ended eventually, and FTH returned to acting. But the man who seemed so poised and confident on screen was fighting a private war every time he stepped onto a stage. Despite his polished demeanor, FTH battles a chronic, paralyzing struggle with clinical stage fright and severe panic attacks. The condition is not a mild case of nerves. It is a full-body terror that makes it difficult to breathe, think, or remember lines. During his last major live music theater run at London's Donmar Warehouse in 1999, his anxiety peaked so catastrophically on opening night that he physically locked himself inside a backstage restroom stall. He sat there alone trying to escape the terror of performing. The audience was waiting, and he could not make himself walk out onto the stage. When he finally attempted to get some fresh air to calm his hyperventilation, he made a mistake that he would never live down. He walked out of a fire exit, music, expecting to be able to come back in the same way. But the heavy door locked automatically behind him, and he was suddenly standing in an alley behind the theater in full costume with no way back inside. The world-famous actor, Music, had to sprint around the block, run through the front lobby, and beg theater security to let him back in. He stepped onto the stage completely shaken, his face flushed, his breath, music, ragged. The audience had no idea what had just happened, but FTH would never forget it. The panic attacks followed Music, him into film work, as well to embody the painfully stammering King George V/6 in Tom Hooper's 2010 B10 masterpiece, The King's Speech. FTH engaged in months of aggressive, music, repetitive vocal rewiring. He worked with speech therapists to learn how to stutter convincingly, and he practiced the stammer so intensely that it became second nature. The training damaged his natural speech patterns for over a year after winning his Academy Award in 2011. Birth suffered a distressing psychological hangover. The severe stutter that he had learned for the role would involuntarily manifest during personal conversations and media interviews whenever he felt fatigued or stressed. He would be talking about something completely unrelated, and suddenly the stammer would appear, as if the ghost of King George had taken Music up residence in his throat. Immediately following his Oscar win for playing a British king, FTH ignited a massive media firestorm. During a live television interview with Piers Morgan, he made a confession that shocked traditionalist viewers. He said that he was a staunch political Republican who actively opposes the concept of an unelected British monarchy. The man who had just made millions playing royal figures who had worn the crown jewels on screen and accepted an award from the Academy for doing so was publicly stating that he did not believe in the institution of the crown. British commentators accused him of hypocrisy. They said he was happy to take the money, but not willing to respect the tradition. Firth did not back down. He believed what he believed, and he was not going to pretend otherwise to make the tabloids happy. His political activism did not stop there. FTH is a deeply active political campaigner, and he has never been afraid to speak his mind. He triggered further public controversy by openly abandoning and condemning the UK Liberal Democrat Party. He pulled his high-profile public endorsement after the party broke, music its core campaign promise and voted to raise university tuition fees. He had supported them because he believed in their commitment to affordable education. When they went back on that promise, he walked away. The decision illustrated his zero-tolerance policy for political compromise, a stance that won him admiration from some and enemies from others. But all of these battles were nothing compared to what came next. FTH faced an ultimate betrayal from someone he trusted with his entire life, and it broke him in ways that the public never fully understood. The ultimate betrayal Colin faced. In 1997, Music FTH married Livia Jolie, an Italian production assistant and environmental film producer who shared his passion for meaningful storytelling. For 20 years, they were heralded as the ultimate class music act of international cinema. They flawlessly split their time between a high-end mansion in Chiswick, London, and a private country estate in Umbria, Italy. They had 2 sons together, and they seemed to have figured out the secret to a lasting Hollywood marriage. The press loved them. Fans adored them. Everyone assumed that Colin and Livia would grow old together, untouched by the scandals that had destroyed so many other celebrity unions. But behind the closed doors of the Italian estate, things were not as perfect as they appeared. Facing quiet marital strain, the couple mutually agreed to a private, unannounced temporary separation between the years of 2015 and 2016. No announcement was made to the press. No legal paperwork was filed. They simply decided to take some time apart to figure out whether their marriage still had a future. During this specific window of separation, Livia engaged in a passionate, highly intimate 11-month extramarital affair with an Italian journalist named Marco Brancacchia. He was not a stranger. He was a childhood acquaintance, someone who had known Livia long before Colin ever entered the picture. The affair was intense and secret, conducted across Italy and beyond. Livia kept it hidden from Colin, and for 11 months she lived a double life. When Livia decided to permanently terminate the affair in late 2016 to return to Colin and rebuild their marriage, Brancacchia refused to accept the rejection. The man who had been her lover became something else entirely. He launched Music, a targeted year-long campaign of psychological harassment against the couple. He sent threatening messages. He made unwanted phone calls. He showed up at places where he knew Livia would be. He wanted her back, and when he could not have her, he decided to make her pay. The harassment culminated in an act, Music, of calculated cruelty. Brancacchia compiled a massive file of highly explicit intimate photographs, text messages, and detailed descriptions of Music, his intimate encounters with Livia. He organized the material carefully, arranging it in a way that would cause maximum damage. Then he sent this entire archive directly to Colin FTH's personal email address. The man who had trusted his wife, who had agreed to separation in good faith, who had welcomed her back into their marriage, was forced to read explicit details of her affair in his own inbox. The betrayal was not just about the affair. It was about the calculated, deliberate nature of the attack. Brancacchia did not want money. He wanted to hurt Colin, and he succeeded. Refusing to be blackmailed or intimidated, Colin and Livia made a decision that surprised many legal experts. They took the high-stakes risk of filing a formal criminal stalking complaint with Italian prosecutors in Rome in early 2018. The move was bold because it meant that the affair would become part of the official legal record. But they believed that the law was on their side, and they wanted Brancacchia to face consequences for what he had done. The filing forced Italian police to seize Brancacchia's computer hard drives and phones, gathering evidence for a potential criminal trial. The filing backfired wildly in terms of privacy. Italian judicial documents leaked directly to global newspapers, and suddenly the story was everywhere. FTH's public relations team was forced to issue a humiliating public statement admitting to the world that his wife had been in a long-term affair with her alleged music stalker. The man who had been heralded as the ultimate class act of international cinema was now the subject of tabloid headlines about his wife's infidelity. Photographers camped outside his London home. Reporters shouted questions about the affair every time he left the house. The private pain that he had been trying to process became public entertainment. In July of 2018, just as the formal criminal trial was scheduled to begin in Rome, FTH's legal team engineered an abrupt emergency out-of-court settlement. The reason for the sudden resolution was simple. The trial would have forced Livia's and Brancacchia's explicit evidence into the public record, meaning that the photographs and text messages would be entered into evidence and potentially seen by anyone who requested the court files. The FTHs could not allow that to happen. They agreed to pay Bronakia an undisclosed sum of music money, and in exchange he agreed to drop his defense and accept the stalking conviction. The matter was legally silenced, but the damage had already been done. The profound public embarrassment and the lingering psychological damage of the extortion proved impossible to overcome. Colin and Livia tried to rebuild their marriage. They went to counseling. They spent time together at their Italian estate, but the trust that had taken 20 years to build was shattered in a single email. In December of 2019, their management issued a joint press release confirming that after 22 years of marriage, they were officially separating. The statement was polite and measured, the kind of language that lawyers draft to avoid giving the music press any new angles, but the pain behind the words was real. And the toll that the betrayal took on Colin FTH would follow him for years. Life after the fallout. During the peak of the Italian stalking investigation, when the tabloids were updating the story almost daily, Firth's physical appearance changed in ways that worried his fans. Global paparazzi captured images of the actor walking through London looking profoundly gaunt, hollowed out, and frail. The man who had once been declared a symbol of attraction now looked like he had not slept or eaten properly in weeks. His cheekbones were sharp, his eyes were sunken, and his clothes hung loosely on a frame that had lost too much weight. Fans took to social media to express their concern, posting side-by-side photographs of FTH from his Pride and Prejudice days next to the new images. The contrast was heartbreaking. The private grief that he was carrying had become visible to anyone who looked, driven by severe disillusionment with British politics and a desperate desire to maintain structural legal unity with his Italian-born children. After his marriage began collapsing, FTH took a radical step. He officially gained dual Italian citizenship, in 2017, adding a second passport to his name. The decision was practical as much as emotional. His children were Italian citizens through their mother, and FTH wanted to ensure that no bureaucratic barrier could ever separate him from them. But it was also a statement. The man who had played a British king and been celebrated as a national treasure was quietly making arrangements to belong somewhere else. Adding to the finality of his mid-60s transition, his ex-wife Livia fully detached herself from their past life. In November of 2025, she shocked social media by revealing that she had privately married her new romantic partner, a man named Callum Grieve. There was no public announcement and no magazine cover deal, just a quiet post on her personal account that confirmed what many had suspected. She had moved on and she had done so without any fanfare. For Colin, the news was another reminder that the chapter of his life that had included Livia was permanently closed. Here is where things get complicated. Despite being legally divorced for more than half a decade and now remarried to another man, Livia still actively uses the FTH surname across her verified public and corporate platforms. The name that she took when she married Colin in 1997 is still the name she presents to the world. In October of 2025, she publicly explained that technical errors on Meta's music platforms had blocked her attempts to update her profile name. But she also added something revealing. She said that she considers herself a FTH mama, permanently bound to that identity because of her children. Whether Colin has any feelings about his ex-wife continuing to use his name is something he has never discussed publicly. He is too polite to complain and too private to share. In May of 2025, the family dynamic was thrown into an entirely new kind of tailspin. Livia went public with the news that she had been privately battling an aggressive diagnosis of breast cancer. The announcement was shocking because she had kept the diagnosis hidden for months, undergoing treatments and surgeries without any media attention. She chose to reveal her illness only after she was confident that she was going to survive. The news landed differently for different people. Fans expressed sympathy and support. Friends reached out with offers of help. But for Colin, the announcement created a new kind of challenge. Despite their past marital trauma, despite the affair and the betrayal and the public humiliation, FTH had to step up. He became an emotional anchor for his two youngest adult sons, Luca and Matteo, who were born in 2001 and 2003. The boys were navigating the terror of watching their mother go through grueling oncology treatments and surgeries, and they needed their father to be present, steady, and strong. Colin set aside whatever bitterness he still carried and showed up for his children. He attended appointments. He sat with them during difficult moments. He let them cry on his shoulder when the weight of their mother's illness became too heavy. The man who had been betrayed by his wife became the man who held their family together when she got sick. The cancer treatments were successful. Livia recovered. The boys came through the ordeal with their relationship with both parents' music intact, but the experience left its mark on Colin. He had spent years trying to heal from the affair. And just as he was making progress, he was called back into service as the family's emotional foundation. But what does Colin FTH's life look like now, after all of this pain? And how is he managing to keep going? Colin FTH's life, music, at 65. Colin FTH officially crossed into his 65th year on September 10, 2025. The milestone marked an era defined by a complete transformation of his on-screen archetype. The romantic hero who had once made millions of hearts flutter was now playing grieving fathers, bitter detectives, and emotionally fractured survivors. The shift was not accidental. FTH had lived through enough pain to understand characters who had suffered, and he was channeling that understanding into the most challenging work of his career. In February of 2025, pop culture delivered a massive emotional blow to FTH's fan base. The production of the fourth film installment, Bridget Jones' Mad About the Boy, revealed music that his most iconic modern romantic character, Mark Darcy, had been abruptly killed off in a military accident. The narrative transformed into a heavy study of widowhood and grief, with Bridget navigating life without the man who had been her happy ending. Fans were devastated. FTH, who had played Darcy for more than 2 decades, understood that the character's death was a necessary creative choice, but it also felt like the closing of a door. The romantic lead, who had defined his middle age, was gone. Just 1 month earlier, in January of 2025, FTH had starred as the lead in the critically acclaimed historical miniseries Lockerbie, A Search for Truth. He portrayed Dr. Jim Swire, a real-life father who spent 3 decades engulfed in absolute grief, seeking justice after his daughter died. The role required FTH to access depths of sorrow that he had only recently experienced in his own life. The performance was raw, unflinching, and universally praised. Critics who had followed FTH's career for decades noted that he had never been better. The pain was real, and it showed. Moving away from lighthearted Hollywood budgets, FTH is currently filming the Apple TV Plus series Berlin Noir. He portrays Paul Loser, a deeply cynical, emotionally fractured historical detective operating within a dark, morally compromised post-war landscape. The character is the opposite of Mark Darcy. There is no charm, no wit, and no happy ending waiting in the wings. There is only a man trying to survive in a world that has broken him. Firth has described the role as the most challenging of his career. Not because of the accent or the physical demands, but because of the emotional darkness he has to inhabit every day. In early 2026, music, Firth wrapped a grueling, physically demanding television shoot in the freezing winter climates of Wales for Amazon's upcoming Young Sherlock series. He plays the highly intense, eccentric role of Bucephalus Adge, a character that required him to perform stunts and action sequences that most men his age would not attempt. The cold was brutal, the hours were long, and the physical toll was significant. But FTH did not complain. He showed up, did the work, and went home to rest before doing it all again the next day, proving that his elite industry music standing remains untouched by age. FTH is starring alongside Emily Blunt in Steven Spielberg's massive, highly anticipated summer sci-fi thriller Disclosure Day, which releases across global theaters on June 12, 2026. The film is a blockbuster in every sense of the word, with a budget that runs into the hundreds of millions and a marketing campaign that will be impossible to ignore. Firth's role is substantial, and early buzz suggests that his performance is one of the film's highlights. He remains heavily attached to high-octane blockbuster cinema as well music, with active development moving forward on King's Man the Blue Blood, where he is, music, set to reprise his physically demanding role as espionage leader Harry Hart. The franchise has been good to FTH, and he is not ready to say goodbye to it. The industry's deep nostalgia for his youth was highlighted when the actual white linen shirt he wore in the 1995 Pride and Prejudice Lake scene was officially put music up for a high-profile charity auction. The shirt, which music had been stored in a costume warehouse for 3 decades, fetched thousands of dollars from a music-devoted fan. The auction reminded the public of the physical passage of time. The man who had emerged from that lake was now 65 years old, and the shirt that had made him famous was now a collector's music item. In his private life, FTH has quietly established long-term stability with his Italian girlfriend Eleonora Perboni. The couple deliberately avoids Hollywood red carpets, preferring to keep their relationship out of the spotlight. They made a rare, highly secure public appearance together at the London gala screening of Spielberg's project in June of 2026, and the photographs showed a man who looked genuinely content. In a definitive statement about the state of his family, Livia confirmed that she, her new husband, Callum, Colin, and Eleonora all actively maintain an extended crazy family dynamic. They frequently dine together, ensuring that FTH's 65th year is rooted in music, peaceful, collaborative harmony rather than isolation. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen. Like and subscribe to our channel for more updates.